Hello and welcome to another episode of Battlefront. This video will actually have some footage from both the Battlefront reboot and Battlefront 2 in order to sort of contrast the two games. The new Battlefront, the new Battlefront footage you're seeing is courtesy of EA's channel because of reasons that I'll soon get into. Now I know that there's been a buttload of videos by people saying Battlefront sucks, etc. So before I go into anything negative, I'm going to talk a little bit what I do like about the new Battlefront, because I feel that while I personally have mixed feelings, it isn't necessarily a bad game, but I'll get into my reasoning on that a little bit later. And I'm going to avoid doing anything clickbaity with this, which seems to be what most of these videos end up being. My first impressions were pretty good during the beta. It's kind of hard not to be blinded by the absolutely breathtaking graphics, but I found that the longer that I played, the more things I found that started to annoy me. At first there was just little things that I didn't think much of, the vehicle system, how you pick up these little icons, the unlimited supply of grenades, the atrocious flight controls, etc. But they started to add up, and the great graphics were starting to be outweighed by the faults. Oh right, I'm supposed to be talking about good things. By the way, you should hit like if you agree that people use the term "I digress" way too much in these types of videos. It's become sort of a pet peeve of mine. But I digress. As many people have said, the graphics and sounds are top-notch. They really do a good job in making you feel that you're in the Star Wars universe. Not that there aren't issues that take away from that, such as helmetless stormtroopers. Damn it. I'm doing it again. But really, I spent some time trying to think of stuff I liked about this game, and beyond those two things, I couldn't really think of anything. I wanted to. I really did. At this point, I wanted to try out Battlefront 2, because for some strange reason I had never actually played the game. It came out at a time during which I wasn't into gaming as much as I had been earlier or later in my life. Probably because all I had at the time was a crappy compact laptop. The game that I primarily played was Star Siege Tribes. Even around 2005 that game was pretty ancient. Other than that, Battlefield 1942 was the only other game I played on a regular basis. Speaking of Battlefield 1942, I used to love playing the Galactic Conquest, the full conversion Star Wars mod for Battlefield 1942. I forgot when that first came out. It may have had some kind of inspiration on the Battlefront series, considering how similar they are. You could also walk around inside the Millennium Falcon. Granted, it was glitchy as hell, and if you did that while it was flying, it would be interesting. But it actually worked better than you might think. You could even control the capital ships. But I died. As I played Battlefront 2, I was finding that around the same point I was starting to tire of Neo Battlefront, I was still having a great time in the older game. Rather interesting that a game with dated graphics can still be a great game as long as it has good gameplay, and a game with amazing graphics has less chance of being enjoyable if it doesn't have good center gameplay, or at least enjoyable in the long term. But lots of people have already talked about the gameplay issues with the new Battlefront, and it isn't even really the reason why I don't want to buy it. My problem is I just can't justify paying $60+ for a game that seems to lack replay value unless you buy DLC. And what I care about in a game like this is the big battles between infantry, ground vehicles, and air support. And the new Battlefront is extremely limited in the amount of maps for those game modes. There are so many different maps for Battlefront 2 that I don't even feel like counting them all. And many of them have infantry, ground, and air. Plus, what is Star Wars without warring in, well, the stars? Let's compare the value of Neo Battlefront with a game like Arma 3. Both full-price games with great graphics, but in Battlefront you get 4, quote, good maps, and then a bunch of maps which are just shooter maps, and the shooter mechanics are very simplistic. Once you get bored of all that, then you aren't left with very much, other than a rather substantial dent in your bank account. With Arma, you get a great campaign, all sorts of neat scenarios, including those made by other people, and last but certainly not least, is an abundance of extremely good modifications. The game has almost unlimited replay value. Now, of course, not every game is going to be like Arma, but even something like Grand Theft Auto 5, you know that you're going to get way more out of that than you are from the new Battlefront, and you're going to be paying around the same amount of money for it, at least when they were first released. I don't think it's a bad game per se, but I do think that it's pretty bad value for money. I do want this game, I want to play it, but I don't plan on buying it until it goes on sale or something. I'd pay $30, maybe even $40 for it. I realize that a lot of money probably went into making this game, and they have to make back their money somehow, but I just don't see enough replay value to justify paying full price for it, because I know this would end up being a game that I just play every once in a while. If they were going to add more content in the future, not as DLC, but for those who have the standard game, then I probably would get it. But it isn't, so yeah. And I know that they've added recently they've added one new map for the people with the standard game, but that's one map. Not really a big difference. So that's just what I think. It's my personal opinion. It's just the reason why I'm not going to be buying the game anytime soon. But what do you think? Do you think that Battlefront is worth it as it is? And that us old-timers should just stop holding on to our old-fashioned gaming ideals and embrace the future? I mean, despite games like Battlefront, us hardcore gamers have it better than we ever had before, with games that have staggering amounts of detail and complexity. So go ahead and like or dislike, and if you're worried I'm not going to do the Star Wars lore episodes anymore because don't have Battlefront, that's not true. I'm still going to keep up on these Star Wars lore episodes because I quite like doing them. So, until next time, good night.